Press the let's go live button. So let's wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain before we go ahead and get started. We don't want to be rambling off into oblivion before things get rocking and rolling, but it looks like they are alive and well, which is tremendous news. That means we can go ahead and get started. So let's do it already, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live, the show that spotlights misconduct involving police, prosecutors, and politicians. My name's Robert Gouveia. I'm a criminal defense attorney, and today we are talking about Donald Trump's trial. We've got a trial date that has been scheduled, and we're going to talk through this. This has kind of been a weird release. The judge, Aileen Cannon, dropped the order. A lot of people on the left, a lot of the anti-Trumpers are very excited about this, like, oh, perfect. We're going to get a trial before the election. And it's like, yeah, that is how it's currently scheduled. But hold the horses, pump the brakes on this thing a little bit. And Donald Trump is actually declaring a victory on this. And I was really curious as to how his team was going to interpret this. Because, yes, technically the trial date is before the 2024 election. And we know that they didn't really want that to happen. So why are they celebrating? Well, we'll get into it. We also have some transcripts courtesy of Julie Kelly, which is obviously, if you're not following, it's like, what the heck you doing? But she's at Julie_Kelly too. She's got some transcripts over there on Twitter. We'll take a look at what she was able to dig up for us because there is some inside detail about what happened at the actual hearing, which is where they debated some of this stuff. So we'll be able to see what Judge Aileen Cannon looks like in these hearings as we get into it. Then we'll go through the actual order itself. Not a long order, but we do have the timeline that has been laid out for us in the form of a chart, and we can go through it, and I'll show you, man. There's a lot going on here. We've got tons of classified information, deadlines and hearings and motions, and submit this and submit that, and every one of those is a little opportunity for a pebble in the shoe. Something is a little speed bump, and everything gets thrown off keister, and so we'll go through that and see. I'm still skeptical that this trial happens before the election, but we'll see. MSNBC Reacts got some fun clips from Joe and Mika Brezinski over there on MSNBC. And then we're going to meet Trump's new lawyer, John Lauro, is a new addition to the team. Haven't heard from him before here. And he just got added. He's saying Trump is not going to be appearing before the grand jury, which is exactly what we expected. And so we were wondering, is there going to be a drop on Friday or a drop on Saturday or Sunday or Monday or what? But we're expecting probably early next week for the drop to come. However, that is what we'll talk about for the Trump update. Then we're going to turn our attention over to what's happening in Georgia because we have big Fani Willis, the biggest Fani that I know in Georgia. And I know there's a lot of people in Georgia, but Fani Willis is the biggest Fani that I know. She is going to be preparing for her indictment. So we're waiting on January 6th to drop. We've got another RICO apparently dropping. And there's been some interesting stuff happening in Georgia. We'll see if we can piece it together. But the police evidently are preparing for indictments to drop any minute now. And we're thinking early August might be the deadline. We've got the Supreme Court rejected one of Donald Trump's motions to quash. She's been doing this grand jury investigation, this special grand jury for a long time. And the Supreme Court threw Trump a loss. But there's weird stuff going on. I'll see if we can piece it together while we're here. I just saw this also, that apparently the Supreme Court sent it back down, but the judge that they sent it to, the panel they sent it to, has to be recused because of a conflict. And so they're bringing in a different panel. It's all a little bit confusing, but we'll see if we can assemble it. We also have another story, a leak that says the Georgia charges are coming in August, so we'll just have to wait for those to drop. And then we've got a clip from Brian Kemp, the actual governor of Florida, and he's talking about the timing and really that all this is just a giant distraction from the other more important issues, like how Biden's wrecking the economy and inching us closer to World War III and how our, well, you get the gist of it. I'll have to stop myself right there, but you get the point. Then we've got a couple letters that have been fired out from Congress that are actually some good letters. We've been covering some of the initial rounds, and I know we go through the letters and everybody's like, oh gosh, another letter. I'm like, I know. But these are yet another letter. But remember, it's like one step after another, one foot in front of the other. We slowly work our way up to Subpoenaville, We're still in Letterland, but we're going to get close to Subpoenaville very soon. I know. How long till we get there? I know. Pipe down already, all right? We're going to get there soon. So I feel the same way, man. I'm in the back seat screaming at Congress. But here, they are getting closer, inching closer to subpoenas. This letter dropped. It's a letter over to Merrick Garland saying that you better give us interviews and testimony from these 11 people. And we know that we want to hear from these people. Matthew Graves is on the list. Leslie Wolf is on the list. This is the letter from Judiciary saying that Merrick Garland, if you do not give us those interviews, then we're going to send subpoenas over to your office, buddy. And so we'll see what that letter says. And Ted Cruz is also out with some commentary on this, saying that the DOJ is involved in a cover-up, which is obviously true. Then we've got a letter that went over to the FBI. Now, this was a doozy. This is an interesting one. We have a letter to Christopher Wray from Congress, and the Oversight Committee, the Judiciary from the GOP, is saying that the FBI knew about the Hunter Biden laptop. They knew it was Hunter's. They knew it was all legitimate. But when they were interfacing with the big tech companies, in particular Twitter, when Twitter asked them, is this legitimate or not? The FBI said no comment, okay? But they knew at the time. And another agent said yes, but then they retracted the yes statement and then they turned it into no comment, okay? The worst, and this was after they pre-butted the entire narrative by convincing the big tech companies that there was going to be a Russian hack and leak operation. And when it was actually asked to them point blank, FBI, is this legitimate or not? They lied by omission and said, no, it's not. Byron Donalds is going to weigh in on this, saying that a lot of this should have been investigated a long time ago. That's obviously true. And then we have James Comer. And this is getting fun. So for some time here, and I have to admit, I thought that they were already on the trail of their foreign bank accounts. We've already been thinking that all of these bank accounts, all these bank records were domestic, sure, but we thought that the tentacles had extended into foreign bank accounts and gone international. Well, we might have been a little ahead there. Sounds like they are just getting started on all of that. And so James Comer is going to tell us that they are getting closer and closer to cracking all of these foreign bank accounts. And I think that's where a lot of the nefariousness is actually residing. So once they start getting their tentacles in there, where does it go? Who knows? But Ted Cruz, man, he's got a nice production set. Ted Cruz, look at that, baby. Woo! Ted Cruz looking good, man. So, man, he's got a full production. Now, I'm in favor of this, okay? I like to kind of, needle him a little bit because it's funny. But he's got a nice production upgrade, man. And I hope we get more Congress people who are getting into the media game. I think this is awesome. So I wanted to share with this. He's always promoting his podcast. Hey, I'm Ted Cruz. I'm fighting for you in the Senate. Also, don't forget to subscribe to my podcast. It's available on Apple. It's just kind of hilarious. But I'm happy about it. I really think it's great, and I wanted to share it with you. He's looking good, man. He's looking good. And I think, Matt Gaetz is doing stuff like this. We're seeing more and more Congress people put their videos on YouTube, right? I'm seeing even Lindsey Graham has a YouTube channel now. Kevin McCarthy, you should update your YouTube channel. Let's get in the game, baby. Let's take this into the digital arena. So anyways, I'll get back to that. So then we've got that. We've got Joe Brezinski, or whatever his last name is. He's complaining about the GOP investigating the Bidens. He's claiming that James Comer is basically working with a Chinese agent. And it's just bizarre to hear these rants when they're complaining about conduct that literally was conduct that Hunter Biden did on behalf of Joe Biden and the Biden crime family. It's just bizarre. But we'll see what Joe Brezinski has to say about it. And then we've got a big question, and we were talking about this on our locals this morning, is about impeachment. All this stuff's going on. But so what? Are the Republicans going to do anything? Are they going to ultimately lead to a Biden impeachment, or is this just much, ado about nothing? We probably know the answer to that, but it is a good question indeed. And so, my friends, we've got a lot to get to today, and we had a great members-only stream this morning. We talked about all sorts of stuff, kind of just bounced around, talked about all the news and law. We talked about unexpected things happening at trials. It was a good conversation. But if you'd like to join us over there and become a member. We have an amazing chat over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, and we'd love to have you join us. We do member-only morning streams. We do a Saturday stream. We'd love to have you. Watchingthewatchers.locals.com, or you can join us on YouTube, another great place to become a member. We hit the Trump docket. We hit the presidential schedule. We really talk about a lot to kind of get the day started, and we have a private members-only Telegram group where the chat never ends. Also want to tell you that we've got a new website. So robertgovea.com is now live, my friends. If you go over there, this is what it looks like. And we're super excited about this. We're testing it out, and it's not testing, it's operational fully. So you can go here, and if you want to sign up and get access to all the mind maps, just click here for instant access, put in your information there, and then you'll get access to the mind map. And if you want to get links to the audio or to sign up for locals or anything like that, you certainly can. And we have reports. So every video also gets turned into a report. So you can read the video if you prefer to read it rather than watch it just to kind of flash through it. And it's all available on this tab here under reports. You can see everything that we're covering right here just to make sure that we never lose touch. I appreciate you signing up. So you sign up for that newsletter, and it's a lot of fun. All right, now let's get into the show, but not before we have our field of greens, because it is time to be healthy. Of course, we would like to lose some of those leftover pandemic pounds, but how sick are you of all the ads for weight loss pills and fad diets? You know, we've all been there. We've all done that, and they just don't work. But you know what does? Eating 5 healthy servings of fruits and vegetables every day. You do that, and the weight would probably just fall right off. But look, vegetables, not a fan, and fruit, who's got time to prepare that every day? I don't. Instead, let's talk about Field of Greens. Now, Field of Greens is a science-backed formula, very specific fruits and vegetables that you're not going to find in any other product. Proper nutrition reboots your metabolism so you burn calories faster and lose weight a healthier way. And Field of Greens is the only brand backed by a better health promise. Yes, you're going to look and feel healthier fast, but the greater proof is going to come at your next checkup when you walk into your doctor's office and he says, "Whoa, baby, you've lost weight. Whatever you're doing, keep it up." And so let's get you started. Go to fieldofgreens.com and enter code Robert when you check out. Load up your cart, check out with code Robert. You'll save 15% off. You're going to get a ton of good stuff. If you just go read the ingredients, you're going to see what I'm ranting all about all the time. It's good stuff. Just read it. Vegetables, fruits, you're like, oh yeah, vitamins and healthy things. Fieldofgreens.com, code Robert. All right. And so let's get into it on the day, because we've got some business to attend to. And it feels a little warm in here. Hang on a second. Let me yell at my thermostat. All right. She's on it. Thanks. Thanks, Google. All right. So now we can get right to it. Now that it's temperature appropriate. Trial date has been scheduled. Donald Trump apparently will be seated May of 2024 for a full-blown jury trial on the classified documents case in Florida. Of course, May is before November, and that means this trial evidently is going to be happening before the election. Now, some people on the left were very happy about this. They were saying, perfect. We wanted to get Trump in trial and convicted so that we can call him a felon before people go into the voting booths in November. And they think that that May trial date is going to anchor that in there hard and fast. But I'm not so sure about it. I think that that might just be a nice little stepping stone to a continuance that postpones this back into November, because May plus 6 months equals November. And that feels like about what a continuance would be to postpone this until after the election. Now, while the left was very excited about it, Donald Trump also declared victory on this. And I think because he gets it. This is what they posted via his spokesperson. They said, today's order by Judge Cannon is a major setback to the DOJ's crusade to deny President Trump a fair legal process. The extensive schedule that we're going to go through here allows President Trump and his team to continue fighting this empty hoax. Crooked Joe Biden is losing and attempting to use his weaponized DOJ against his top political rival, a disgraceful and un-American abuse of power. Crooked Joe will fail, and President Trump will win back the White House for the American people. July 21st, 2023, via Trump spokesman. You see, I think there's a lot of truth to this. There is a lot of time on the clock left. The judge did set a date, and when we were going through the request, remember the government wanted a December date. Trump wanted an indefinite date. Trump said, well, we don't really need to anchor it in there, Judge. I don't really know what our schedule is going to be like. Let's just leave it undefined, which is a rare thing. I mean, that's almost never done in criminal law because we've got speedy trial rules and regulations, and we can't lose sight of that end date. We are always calculating the time that elapsed between the charges, the arraignment, and then the ultimate conclusion of the case, and we've got calculations there. So we were wondering, where are they going to set this thing? Judge dropped it right in May. Now, in between now and May, there's going to be a lot of speed bumps. There's a lot of bumps in the road as we go through this, and we're going to detail exactly what those might be as we actually see the schedule in the order from the judge. But before we get to the final ruling, let's see how the hearing went. What happened on the day when this was all debated? And here is what we learned, courtesy of our very good friend, Julie Kelly, on Twitter at Julie_Kelly2. She writes the following. She says, Judge Aileen Cannon set a May 2024 trial date. These are the excerpts from the hearing. And Cannon starts the hearing by criticizing the DOJ and their weak attempt to confer with the defense. And previously here, remember that the DOJ moved for a protective order, and they said, Your Honor, we've been trying to call Donald Trump and his team. We've been like, hey, it's Friday, it's Saturday, it's Sunday. Can you meet with us? And they're like, no, we're busy. It's Saturday, it's Sunday. And then I think they sent an email on Friday night, and then they were angry, filing motions on Monday morning. They're like, Your Honor, they didn't get back to us. And the defense is like, hey, whack jobs, we're not on your beck and call. Sorry. And we're going to see where the judge picks up on this. Here's what they say. The court, Judge Aileen Cannon. All right, everybody, talking to the prosecutor. So I've heard about, I think you said government prosecutors about what, 1.1 million pages? Is that what you said? Jay Bratt, the prosecutor, says, that's correct, Your Honor. Okay, and so 1.1 million pages. And in terms of the footage, how many months does that run through, all the surveillance? Bratt says, so, well, it covers a 9-month period, but not all the cameras were, but it is not all the cameras at Mar-a-Lago or Bedminster. Not all the cameras were always running. And the retention period that the Trump organization had, it varied from camera to camera. And so it is not a solid 9 months of video. So in some cameras, Trump would, retain it for, let's say, 30 days. In other cameras, he'd retain it for 6 months. Others would be 90 days. And so we don't know exactly how much is in each batch. Court says, okay, well, I haven't seen what the objections are to that. Was there meaningful conferral on Section 3 of this rule? I wasn't sure why it was filed without meaningful conferral pursuant to the rules. So the judge is saying, did you meet with Trump's people here? Rule Section 3 says you got to do all this conferral. Did you do that? Prosecutor says, so we tried. We reached out to them. Judge says, when did you try? When was that? He said, so we had an email exchange on Friday. And Friday, we were trying to set up a call on Friday, and we were advised by counsel that they were tied up. And we saw that in their filing. You're in there. They didn't get back to us. Bratt says, so Judge, I suggested that we could make some time over the weekend to talk if that was possible. And we didn't hear a response from them on that. The judge says, okay, so hold on. She says, so you tried to confer on a Friday before filing on a Monday, something that is presumably quite important? That seems a bit rushed. That's interesting. You're filing a substantial protective order that's going to be limiting the defense and tying Trump's hands, and you just drop it on them on a Friday night, and then you file on a Monday like, hey, Your Honor, they're not cooperating with us on this. That seems a bit rushed. That's not meaningful conferral, prosecutor weirdos. This continues. Julie tells us that the DOJ has 1,500 pages of classified material, including various files from NARA. The May subpoena production, the Mar-a-Lago raid, both included. Trump's lawyers can see about 80% of it, but the Department of Justice, under interim security clearances, is what they said. Now, full clearance is going to take 2 months. Julie tells us, here's how the DOJ wants the judge to treat Trump. Looks like this is a government prosecutor speaking. Says, Your Honor, the second thing I'd like to address briefly is something that is plainly in tension here. And that is the defense's view that Mr. Trump in particular should be treated differently in light of the circumstances, whether it's the fact that he's a former president or the fact that he's running for president or what have you. Government prosecutor, probably Jay Bratt, says, in our view, he should be treated like anybody else, which is rich coming from this Department of Justice, which is hysterical. Their boss is Joe Biden and Merrick Garland, and they're telling us that nobody's above the law here. Tell that to the cokehead in the White House. In our view, he should be treated like anybody else. So Trump should just be thrown, I guess in the gutter with what, the J6ers? Is that what they want to? Or what? Should he be treated like Joe Biden or Hunter Biden and exonerated completely? Like that? He says, in our view, he should be treated like anybody else. And so we see that plainly as a tension here. But our view, we think, is supported by the Constitution, says Bratt, or whomever, and the United States Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit, and not to mention a fundamental tenet of the Republic. Oh, gosh. In short, Mr. Trump is not the president. He is a private citizen who has been indicted by a lawfully impaneled grand jury in this district, and his case should be governed by the Constitution, the United States Code, and the federal rules of criminal procedure, just like anyone else's. Because he still is pretending, they're like role-playing, that he's a part of a legitimate institution and that it's a legitimate actual indictment and all of this grand juries all impaneled appropriately and that none of this is done extra constitutionally in the first place. But of course it is. Julie shares this about Trump's lawyers. Talking about classified papers in boxes at Mar-a-Lago while he was still president. She tells us that Smith is going to have to prove that any record in the indictment was indeed taken to Mar-a-Lago after he left office and contained in boxes shipped to Mar-a-Lago after January 2021. Here's a clip. This says, this isn't a case that's like many other cases in federal courtrooms around this country. The fact that President Trump was indicted and the reason why he was indicted for possession of classified documents, purportedly classified documents in a series of boxes in his residence, many of which were moved, we believe, before President Trump even left office. Some of them were maybe there afterwards. We don't know. That's something we're looking at in discovery. So timing of the movement of the boxes. Julie's laughing. She says Jack Smith has the equivalent of 3 years of security camera footage. Trump's team wants to try to watch all of it. Of course they do. Every lawyer needs to watch all of it. We need multiple opinions, man. And we got to watch it on slow-mo too, just to make sure it's all framed. Our experts have to watch it too. Man, it's going to take probably a decade to watch all of it. I'm just saying. It's going to be complicated, man. It's and defense attorneys, we're not that bright either. Okay, we are not very good with technology. So they're going to send us CDs and hard drives and terabytes, and we're going to be like, oh no, how does it work? The algorithm. It's all proprietary, classified crap. We're going to be mashing two rods together. Is this how it works? Oh, I don't know. Is it going to plug in here? All delayed until weird after 2024 election, November. Then suddenly everything's going to start working. Oh, thanks for the discovery. Now we're ready for trial. Trump's president. Let's go. So it's going to be amazing. But the DOJ says, no, you don't need to look at anything. You can just trust us. We're the DOJ. We're legitimate. Judge Cannon says, no. That's not how that's going to work. Here's the transcript. Now, this looks like it's Trump's attorney talking. Says, all right, Your Honor. Now, I'm not suggesting, Trump's lawyers, I'm not suggesting to the court that we're going to sit here, okay, for 3 years and watch 3 years' worth of video. Which is nice of him. But it's a tremendous amount of data and information, Judge, okay? And look, I'm just talking right now about the CCTV footage, that's all. While the government is correct, they're right, that they have pointed us to the few days that they believe are the most significant to them. They're like, it's the 13th and the 8th and the 14th. And they say it relates to the charges in the indictment. That's what we charged. Here's the dates that are charged in the indictment. Here are the dates on video. This is what you need. And presumably that's in the search warrant. They say they're not the most significant to us. They might be important to them, but not to us. Trump's defense says, the movement of boxes and where boxes were on given days, the movement and where the boxes were on any given days is extraordinarily significant, not only to the justification for the search warrant, which means we're going to get a motion to preclude. That search warrant is going to be challenged. They're going to try to get that search warrant thrown out. It's significant to the justification for the search warrant of the residence of Trump and the president, but also to the defense of the case. And so the CCTV footage alone, over 1,100 days of CCTV footage, Your Honor, makes the schedule that the government proposed pretty disingenuous, Your Honor. There's just no way that we could do it. And they know it, and we know it, and they know we know it, and they know you know it. And so what they're doing is they're trying to just shove this through. It's dishonest. Now, the government prosecutors are complaining back. They say, Your Honor, well, with respect to the closed circuit television and the movement of boxes, I just want to note that the movement of boxes occurred between May 24th and June 2nd. So it's not years worth of video with respect to the movement of the boxes, okay? And with respect to the classified information, I know Trump's lawyer, Mr. Blanche, and the judge jumps in and says, hey, the defense would have to review all of the footage to be properly informed about the scope of the footage. Obviously, they're going to review it all. Judge Cannon says, it's not the case that we're going to zoom in on whatever period of time the government isolates as critical. And Prosecutor Bratt says, of course, but a lot of what they're going to be doing is having, not themselves, is having somebody run through the video and seeing essentially nothing happening, or, seeing somebody walk across a particular area and being filmed. He's like, hey, you can fast forward through it. None of the people who have any relevance to this case, he says, but yes, yeah, that takes time, Judge. But it's not, it's not like reading documents. It's like viewing something. So the prosecutor, he's like, it's not that hard. You're just going to sit there and fast forward this thing. Whether it's coming or not, they'll be able to go through it quickly. Now, we've got some legitimate venue arguments, according to Miss Julie Kelly. She says the judge, Beryl Howell in D.C., who's an Obama appointee, who also oversaw the Mueller investigation, gave the DOJ, then Smith, everything they wanted, including an order to pierce attorney-client privilege from Evan Corcoran. Then they moved everything to Southern Florida. Involved a little more than reading a DC grand jury transcripts to a new, it's very sneaky. Okay, so Julie Kelly is telling us that they did a bunch of stuff in Washington, D.C., and then got the information. So The DC judges just allowed them to do whatever they wanted. Jack Smith, his special counsel, they're like, hey, we're the lawyers here to fight against the insurrectionists. And the judges are like, oh gosh, we've been waiting for you. Thanks for saving us. And so they say, whatever you need, you've got it. Here, go attorney-client privilege, shattered. Executive client privilege, oh, shattered. No problems. Oh, you want subpoenas, you want this. Okay, no problem. Here you go. Everything you need, carte blanche, here you go. So then they get all of the data, all of the information, and they say, oh, well, how about we just take all of this data and shove it down in Florida because that's where the jurisdiction is. That's where the actual crime needs to be alleged. Because the document, it was in Mar-a-Lago, that's where the raid was, that's where the search warrant was and all of it. But they're using information from outside of the jurisdiction to prosecute crimes inside the jurisdiction. In other words, the judge in Florida may not have granted the same requests that were granted and approved in DC. But Jack Smith is being very sneaky here, and Trump's team is going to be defending this. Says, just by way of one example, as the court knows from the indictment, one of the government's main witness in this case is President Trump's lawyer. And the government was investigating this. The grand jury initially in this case was in DC. And everything regarding the grand jury and what happened there was in DC. There's a U.S. Attorney Manual provision that states clearly that a case should not be presented to a grand jury in the district unless venue for the offense lies in that district. There's no scenario under which most of the statutes charged against Trump that would have lied in the District of Columbia. But that being said, that's where this case was presented. And it still continues to be, at least in part, presented there based on our understanding. That's a significant issue, but it requires review of the discovery. It requires review of discovery. The judge says to Trump's lawyer, they say something, Your Honor, we need a careful and complete review being necessary of the, quote, procedures that led to this indictment. She says to the lawyers, can you put any meat on the bones to that? Trump's lawyer says, Your Honor, I think that's what Mr. Blanche was referencing, sort of the search warrant, those procedures. The grand jury procedure that he mentioned is from a case called Washington versus South Florida. Oh, is the districts. Grand jury, Washington jurisdiction versus South Florida have different grand jury procedures. All of the issues surrounding Trump's lawyer testimony, Mr. Corcoran's, and the appropriateness or not of that testimony. In other words, can Evan Corcoran's testimony, which was gathered after permission of a DC judge to breach attorney-client privilege, can the resulting testimony from Trump's lawyer be used in Florida in this prosecution? Because this judge didn't approve the cracking of that attorney-client privilege. A DC judge did. Stanley Woodward, the lawyer for Walt, hints that the DOJ also abused the grand jury process by conducting nearly the entire investigation in a DC courthouse rather than in Florida. So Walt's attorney chimes in. Anything from you? He says, yes, thank you, Your Honor. I just want to pick up where Trump's lawyer, Mr. Keese, left off. I have serious questions about how an investigation that had been pending for months and months and months in the District of Columbia ever even ended up here. What are we doing here in the Southern District? You know, as the court is aware, I was personally involved in a fair amount of litigation in the District of Columbia. This lawyer is representing a ton of J6ers. And so I'm especially curious as we see discovery. I've seen a lot of files in DC January 6 Trump cases. I'm curious to know what was done in DC and then what was done in Miami, and whether there's a motion here for abuse of grand jury process in this case. Whether there's a motion for abuse of grand jury and the grand jury process in this case. Those are rare, I understand that, But this is a new case, and we can't bring such a motion before Your Honor without understanding there's any merit there. And the only way for us to understand if we can file that motion is to review the discovery, which is just great. They have some serious issues. Julie says that Jack Smith is going to try hard to prevent Trump from seeing these classified documents. They don't even want Trump to see the evidence anymore. They say, well, he's not president anymore, so he doesn't need to see these classified documents. The argument that a former president who had access to these documents and created the documents, and in my opinion, of Article 2, the opinion clause, they are literally his documents because there's nobody else who has ultimate possession of them. They were his. He has the ultimate authority to them. She says now it smacks of desperation. Trump's lawyer notes at the bottom, it's not a typical case of an unauthorized individual stealing documents. They're Trump's. They say on the classified information, Your Honor, this is, and you asked Mr. Brad about this, Your Honor, there's no case like this. This has never happened before. I mean, the president has original declassification authority. He's one of a few people in this country that possess that as a president. Whether that's part of the review of classified materials, we don't know yet. And Your Honor is right. The proposed protective order right now doesn't allow us to discuss anything with our client as it relates to any of the materials that we see that are classified without getting permission from the government. So we have to go ask the government prosecutors who are through and through Trump haters, or, this is their entire livelihood and career and persona and identity, waking up being Trump prosecutors. The defense have to go to them and say, can we show our client this evidence? They say, no, he's not the president. He doesn't need to see that. Thanks. Trump's team says, and so there are complicated Section 5 motion practice things that are definitely going to take place. And we can't speak intelligently about it yet because we haven't seen the documents. He's hinting that they're going to want to show Trump something and the government's going to want to say no. And that there's going to be a battle over that and Your Honor is going to have to deal with it. It's a speed bump. He says it's not like a typical case where somebody has classification authority and they illegally possess the documents and then is arrested for that. That's just not what this case is. And so it's going to be something that takes a lot of time, battling back and forth. And so thank you to the transcripts from our friend Julie Kelly. Make sure you're giving her a follow at Julie_Kelly2 on Twitter, a must follow over on Twitter. Great reporting. Now, this is the actual order from Judge Cannon. Here's what she wrote. Not a long order, but with all that backdrop, knowing that this is all going to be contested, we have a 7-page filing coming out of West Palm Beach, Southern District of Florida. The case is USA versus Trump and Walt. Judge Aileen Cannon presiding says, all right, this matter comes before the court upon the government, Jack Smith's motion to continue the trial. They wanted to postpone this all the way back to December. The court has reviewed the motion, Trump's response to the motion. They wanted an indefinite trial date, and the government's reply to Trump's motion, they wanted December. And we held a pretrial conference, and I heard all the arguments about it. And here is what I have decided. After my review, it is hereby ordered and adjudged as follows. Jack Smith's motion to continue the trial, he wanted it postponed a little bit. Remember, we were scheduled for August, is granted in part for the reasons stated below. The court finds, Jack, that the interest of justice served by this continuance outweigh the best interest of the public and the defendants in a speedy trial. We do a balancing test. The defendant might want a speedy trial. The public might want a speedy trial, so justice is done quickly. but we might have due process concerns. We might need to properly investigate things, and sometimes things have to slow down a little bit so that we don't just throw people in prison without affording them process. The court has considered the factors in the law when I've made my decision, and having done so, the court finds that the period of delay resulting from this continuance, for example, from the time this motion was filed in June to the trial date, is excludable time under the Speedy Trial Act. And this is why we always have end dates on trials, because if you lose track of how much time has elapsed, you might run afoul of the Constitution, which says the defense has a right to a speedy trial. The judge tells us, this case is currently set for trial in August, with a deadline to file motions in July. All parties agree that a continuance is warranted. Nobody's objecting to postponing this. So we're definitely not going to trial in August. Everybody agrees. Even the court. But the parties do disagree as to the length of the continuance and the appropriateness of setting a schedule. They say, let me get this out of the way as a preliminary matter, Judge Cannon. The court rejects Trump's request to withhold a setting of a schedule now. The court deems necessary to manage the proceeding through important stages of discovery and SEPA briefings and motion practice and trial practice, and we don't see a basis to postpone any scheduling order. But we do agree that Jack Smith's proposed schedule is atypically accelerated. Atypical. Why are we going so quickly? And it's inconsistent with ensuring a fair trial, obviously. They wanted him convicted and sentenced and imprisoned before people walked into the ballots. But they may not get that done now. The judge says, as it stands, the government timeline spans less than 6 months from the first discovery production. And this case involves, at the very least, more than 1.1 million pages of non-classified discovery produced thus far. Some unknown quantity of which is described by the government as non-content, they say. It's got at least 9 months of camera footage with disputes about what's pertinent or not, and 1,500 pages of classified discovery that's ready to be produced, with more to follow, she writes, plus additional content from electronic devices and other various sources. And so Cannon says, even by conservative estimates, the amount of discovery in this case is voluminous and likely to increase in the normal course as trial approaches. Because this is what the government has created. The defense hasn't even, first of all, seen it yet, and even started asking questions yet. They're going to get one page and they're going to say, whoa, that's interesting. Who's that? Who's that? What did that happen? Where's the calendar invite? Where's the email? What did you have for lunch that day? And who served it to you? Well, they're going to file a request for supplemental discovery. It's all going to go back to the government. And then they're going to, have to produce it. And if they say we're not producing that, then they're going to go to the judge and say, Your Honor, we need it. And they're not giving it to us. And then guess what? That's a whole tangent of a fight, and around we go. And while the government has taken steps to organize and filter the extensive discovery, no one disagrees that Trump and the defendants need adequate time to review and evaluate it on their own accord. Thanks for labeling it for us, okay, with your sticky notes. But here's what we think of your sticky notes. Right in the garbage! To add further complication, a material portion of the discovery in this case is subject to the procedures in SEPA, the judge writes. Procedures that all agree often lengthen the ordinary trajectory of the case from indictment to trial. That is no less the case here, where the matter involves substantial quantity of classified discovery that is yet to even be produced, pending a court resolution of a forthcoming protective order that we're settling. We've got to discuss security clearance briefings, processing of final security clearances for different portions of the classified discovery. We've got logistics reviews, expedited preparations for different accredited facilities. It's going to be a mess. Then there is a matter of extensive pretrial motion practice, as described by Trump's team in their responses, and the bare minimum of Trump's responses is going to require a considerable amount of time for the court to review, independent upon the merits of the motions. So the judge says, look, I expect to just have to review a boatload of motions. But if the outcome of one of those motions opens up another avenue, that could deviate the whole process. She says that Trump, for their part, they characterize the government's approach to this case as unusually expedited and cursory, which is true. And they, the defense, request additional time to conduct their review of the voluminous discovery. A lot has yet to even be produced yet. And they describe the case as falling squarely within the complex case designation under the law. Trump people, they maintain that this proceeding raises novel, obviously brand new, complex, and unique legal issues. And it cites the interplay between the Presidential Records Act, various criminal statutes, constitutional challenges, yes, to the authority of the special counsel to even maintain this action, disputes about the classification of the subject documents, challenges to the grand jury process that led to the indictment, questions of attorney-client privilege, probably executive privilege at some point, requests for defense discovery, pretrial motions, motions to suppress, motions to sever, and lots more. And as a final category, Trump also identifies various additional factors that the court deems unnecessary to a resolution of the government's motion at this time. Most principally, so unnecessary to the resolution right now is jury selection stemming from the publicity about 2024. So see this here? This is a back pocket. This card is going right in Judge Cannon's back pocket. She's like, oh, here we go. Gonna hang on to that one here for a couple months. Trump people say election is going to cause a big problem with getting a fair and impartial jury. Court says, we're not going to resolve that right now. Let me hang on to that. Upon review of the parties' competing arguments, government says this, Trump says this, then the government said that again, says it's clear to the court a continuance is warranted in this case. First, as the record reveals, the discovery in this case is very exceedingly voluminous, going to require a lot of time to review, and Trump needs to do that in order to have a fair trial. And second, this is a classified documents case, which although on its own may not in fact warrant designating this case complex by itself, they say that by itself, the law, however, strongly counsels in that direction, given the following things. We have substantial quantities of classified documents. We've got a SEPA briefing. We've got the need for the defense and the court to review the classified discovery under very appropriate safeguards. We've got a lot of pending logistics. And third, even accepting the government's contested submission that nothing in this case is novel, the fact remains that this court is going to be faced with extensive pretrial motion practice on a diverse number of legal and factual issues, all in connection with your 38-count indictment. These factors, the judge says, are enough to designate this case complex under the law, and the court is unaware of any searchable case where this court, in which any court, has refused a complex designation under comparable circumstances. So the judge says, I've done my research. I've done my homework. I've scoured all of the other cases around this country. This is complex. 38 counts, million pages of documents, 9 months of video files, president, classified, declassified, classified issues, breaching of attorney-client privilege. The list goes on and on. I'm designating it complex. It justifies a long continuance. And for the reasons as stated above, I am scheduling the following pretrial and trial schedule. Now, we are not going to stick to this hard and fast, right? There was already one of these that was written, and the whole thing is now going into the garbage because the judge bumped this whole thing out basically a year. She says the calendar call, which is the final proceeding before a trial, you just go there, you sort of make sure, hey, calendar next week, we're there for trial. Everybody here, defense shows up, government, prosecutor shows up, we're ready. Any final issues? Nope, see you next week. This case set for a 2-week trial, which still seems, light to me, but commencing for 38 counts, although, 31 of the counts are documents, but still. The trial would start May 20th. Now, there's a lot that takes place as we lead up to that. Look at all this stuff. Protective order motion, July. Trump files an opposition. Government responds to Trump. We have a hearing on the motion. We have, and remember, every time there's a hearing, there's a ruling, then there's the potential to appeal or special action those, to challenge those in another variety, depending on what the ruling is, depending on what the law says, depending on what these things involve. Then we have hearings. We don't get the initial production of classified discovery until September of this year. Status report. Trump's team is going to respond and say, well, we didn't get this, we didn't get that. Your Honor, we're missing this, we're missing that. We'd like to see this. Government provides updates, more updates in ex parte filings. This means that Trump files his directly to the judge. The government files theirs directly to the judge. And it just keeps going. Another hearing, which means we might have another ruling, which means we might have other challenges. Expert witnesses are going to be disclosed. Always problems with those. Here are some evidentiary hearings and pretrial motions. That doesn't take place until December of this year. And every one of these line items, my friends, I don't want to go through every single one of these, but leading up until the jury trial in May 2024 is a potential for a problem and probably going to lead to a problem. And so if we stay on track, I'll be surprised. One thing I noted on this, and we talked about this morning on our members only live stream, was the fact that this is May 20th. I thought this was a very interesting date. If Trump comes back and they ask for a continuance or something is askew as we get closer to these trial dates, and I could be wrong, we could have a full trial on this date. I'm just doubting it. But if we do, remember, we are right in the thick of election season now. As it stands, we've got at least 4 states that are going to be going before May. Certainly Iowa is already scheduled for January. New Hampshire is up in the air, but it's early. We've got Nevada and South Carolina, all between January and February. So by the time May comes around, we're going to be getting close to wrapping up and going into the general election season. And so we can't postpone this thing 3 months or 4 months or 5 months. We got to postpone it 6 months, which means it's going to be after the election. May plus 6 is going to give us November 20th, 2024. And if we get there, and let's say Donald Trump wins the White House, well, then he's in control of the Department of Justice moving forward. Not on this date. Not until January the following year of 25. But we've got some interesting timing things happening. So we'll see if they stay on track and if they're able to squeeze that in time. I'm not so sure of it. But we've also got reaction on this. MSNBC chimed in on this with Joe and Mika Brezinski on their show. Here's what they said.
All right, we have a pretty significant update in the classified documents trial against former President Donald Trump. Judge Aileen Cannon just filed a document announcing a date for the trial for the Mar-a-Lago documents case. And that date is that the case will begin May 20th, 2024 in Fort Pierce, Florida. There are also numerous court dates prior to trial listed for various motions. So a lot will be happening before May 20th, 2024. There was a lot of discussion about what the date should be or could be, and both sides wanted something completely different, Joe.
Well, they did. I mean, Judge Cannon, of course, remember, Judge Cannon had been roundly criticized and rebuked by the conservative 11th Circuit for some past decisions. So there had been some skepticism of her ability to handle this case in a fair and impartial way. But I will tell you, I think most attorneys I spoke with thought that the Fed's date that they suggested, the end of December, was probably too soon because of how complex the case was, and thought that Donald Trump's suggestion, his attorney's suggestion that it be held after the election in 2025 also unrealistic. I've got to say, again, I'm an attorney, but I have no grasp of just how complex a case like this could be. When you look at the mountains of evidence that the federal government has against Donald Trump, you look at the files, my God, the files, you look at the fact that we're talking about classified documents. It's an extraordinarily complicated case. I was always skeptical about the December timeline. I must say May 20th, 2024, it seems very reasonable. It seems like a reasonable date. It seems like it's far enough in the future to be fair to the
After
defendant.
the primary.
President Trump, politically it'd be after the primary. But if you're a judge, you're not looking at that. And I think this date makes an awful lot of sense. So we will see as we move forward. But obviously, there's going to be a lot of coverage between now and then. A lot of dates, obviously, court dates, too.
All right, so that's the Joe and Mika Brezinski show. And, you know, I think they're right about it. It is kind of reasonable. It feels reasonable. The analogy is you can't make it on the green in one shot. You've got a long par 5, so you got to drive it into the middle of the fairway to set it in May and then hit it again in May onto the green, and Trump's going to want to do that. In May, he'll take another shot at this, pop it off. It'll land on the other side of the election. And so speaking of Trump and strategy and his team, we have a new Trump lawyer enters the game. This guy's name is John Lauro, and he showed up on Fox, and he had a conversation about Trump appearing for the January 6th grand jury. Of course, we know Jack Smith is looking at bringing an indictment very soon. Trump's already gotten the target letter, so it could drop any minute. And he is saying Trump doesn't need to show up and appear because he's innocent as can be. What's the point?
But there's no need to appear in front of any grand jury right now. President Trump did absolutely nothing wrong. He's done nothing criminal, and he's made his case that he was entitled to take these positions as president of the United States. When he saw all these election discrepancies and irregularities going on, he did what any president was required to do because he took an oath to do exactly that.
All right, we'll dig more into that in just a minute. But first, you're going to be solely focused on the Jack Smith investigation into the aftermath of the 2020 election. You're also part of the team that was trying to dig into whether others in the former president's orbit received target letters like he did. What have you found?
Well, the bottom line is that the special prosecutor, which is really the Biden Justice Department, is after President Trump, and that's the focus. And they're accusing the president of two things, essentially. Number one, that there was some kind of effort to obstruct the January 6th count. The only thing that President Trump asked is a pause in the counting so those 7 contested states could either re-audit or recertify. I've never heard of anyone get indicted for asking for an audit. What President Trump was looking for was the truth, was to find out exactly what happened in those 7 contested states. That's just not criminal. The other statute that they're looking at is whether or not President Trump intimidated anyone or ballot stuffed. And that's an example of really the criminal justice system being used against the victim. Because here, what the president was seeing in real time after November is all these election discrepancies, all these unlawful acts at a state level. And what he asked ultimately is to find out the truth and get to the truth. And that's just not criminal.
Right. Everybody in any election, in any campaign that's ever happened, has always asked a question, what about the votes? They sit around all the time talking about the votes. So if Trump is calling different people who are part of the Republican Party, different, elected officials and all of these things to have conversations with them as the commander in chief, as long as he's not crossing the line where he's putting pressure on them and coercing them, which we'll see if there's testimony about that in the January 6th case, he is allowed to articulate and advocate for his position. We live in an adversarial system, and when there is a potential for an illegitimate election, people are allowed in this country to ask questions about it. The Democrats have a history of doing it. We've got minutes and minutes of them doing it. They objected just like Republicans objected, but they don't prosecute themselves. They only prosecute the Republicans when they do it. And so Donald Trump celebrates the May 2024 trial date. I think he should, because I think This was just a chip shot. They'll come back in May. I expect it to be continued again to postpone this until after the election. Now, the January 6th case in D.C., that's a different judge. That's a different jurisdiction. It's going to be a whole different story. We'll be covering them both. Thank you, my friends, for subscribing wherever it is you're watching this as we continue to cover. All right. Now, let's see what's going on in Georgia. Big Fani Willis, the biggest Fani in Georgia. She's the lead prosecutor who's going to be pursuing a RICO case against Donald Trump. She says that charges are probably coming in August. That's according to a new report, an exclusive from The Guardian. We'll take a look at those details. But we've also got a story about the police preparing for the indictment, saying that there's going to be riots and madness, and so they've got to brace for impact. But this comes after the Georgia Supreme Court also rejected Trump's attempt to quash this special grand jury. So we'll take a quick look at that before we hear from Brian Kemp, the governor, who tells us what he really thinks about Big Fani Willis. So the first story is over from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. They say that law enforcement is bracing for impact there in Georgia. They tell us downtown Atlanta over the years played a host to a lot of different things, but now the expected indictment of Trump presents a unique challenge. In the scene at Trump's federal arraignment in Miami, his surrender could attract a lot of news. But now they're expecting a bunch of officers patrolling on bikes, motorcycles, horses, and helicopters. We've got people from DHS who are coming in. Fani Willis is here. Fulton's district attorney was heavily suggested that she's going to be seeking criminal charges against Trump next month. She spent 2.5 years investigating him, and in a letter to law enforcement, she urged leaders to get ready for heightened security and preparedness because she says her decision could provoke significant public reaction. There's Fani. You see, they're heeding her advice. Well, why wouldn't they? The Fulton Sheriff's Office confirmed it sent deputies to study the security in Miami and in New York City, where Trump was arraigned. They're looking to see what safety and security looks like, so we are prepared holistically from all the Trumpers. Unlike in New York, Trump wouldn't need to be present in Superior Court for a potential indictment to be unsealed, but he would need to travel there and be prepared to surrender to authorities. So, all right, they're bracing for impact. They're all, giddy as can be. I think just, salivating over this opportunity. This is her entire basis for existence. They run for office on the back of prosecuting Trump. She did it here. These different prosecutors in different jurisdictions. Tish James did it. In fact, there's an open question. Who is bigger? Fani Willis, the biggest Fani in Georgia, or Tish James, the biggest Tishy in New York? Open question. We don't know. But they make their careers on the back of prosecuting Trump, and they're going to finish the job and lead to indictments. And so Trump tried to stop some of this by submitting a motion to the Supreme Court of Georgia, saying that this is a partisan prosecution and it's illegitimate. But the Supreme Court of Georgia came back and declined Trump's request. They say petitioner Trump asked this court for a writ of mandamus and prohibition against Fani Willis. They wanted her to be stopped from investigating facts about Trump's administration and his challenges to 2020. They sought to quash the grand jury report and to compel her and disqualify her from her role. But the court says no. They say, first of all, the procedures were inappropriate here, how this has been filed. But they say that here Donald Trump has not shown that this case presents one of those extremely rare circumstances where this court's original jurisdiction should be invoked, and therefore the petition is dismissed. Okay, so it's kind of a procedural problem. He went to the court. He's asking for something that the court doesn't have original authority over. And that the court will not do it. So that means the prosecution against Trump is going to go forward. And apparently it is going to be coming in August. The Guardian got the details on this one. They say the racketeering charges in this exclusive are going to involve influencing witnesses and crimes like computer trespass, is what they say. DA Fani is going to be investigating Trump, and it's going to lead to a sprawling racketeering indictment next month. How do we know? 2 people briefed on the matter leaked it to The Guardian. The racketeering statute in Georgia requires that prosecutors show that an enterprise existed, that there's a pattern of racketeering that's predicated on 2 qualifying crimes. What could those be? Apparently, she's got evidence that the racketeering indictment is going to be predicated on statutes that are relating to influencing witnesses and computer trespass for RICO charges. Willis had previously said she was weighing racketeering charges in her criminal investigation, but the new details about the direction and the scope of the case are expected to seek indictment starting in the first 2 weeks of August. So she'll be number 4, the 4th indictment, first 2 weeks of August. The racketeering statute in Georgia, more expansive than its federal counterpart because it any attempts to solicit or coerce the qualifying crimes can be included as predicates. So in other words, you don't actually have to accomplish the underlying crime with other people. If you just solicit, if you're asking or encouraging or coercing other people to do those crimes, even if they're not completed, that still counts as a predicate that justifies the racketeering. The specific evidence was not clear, though the charge regarding influencing witnesses could include Trump's conversation with Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger. That's the phone call. He asked Raffensperger to, quote, find 11,000 votes. And Trump says, in his interpretation, it's, well, have you found that 11,000 votes? Like, what's the difference? What's the margin between the votes? Which, of course, is a conversation that happens all the time. But the government, the prosecutor is going to say that Trump says, find them. And, like just go Xerox them. Just go pretend you're like the Democrats and just go pull out the suitcases from underneath the bins and then pull out the ballots. Just go find them. Democrats presume Trump is using find like they use it, but Trump is using it like we use it. Okay. So for the computer trespass charge, where prosecutors, they would have to show that Trump used a computer or a network without authority, and that would include breaches of voting machines in Coffee County. And these apparently were Trump operatives paid by Sidney Powell who accessed voting machines and copied sensitive data. The copied data from Dominion was then uploaded to a site, and that might be part of the prosecution. A spokesman for Big Fani did not respond to a request for comment, and they've been investigating this for years. So this is the clip from the governor of Georgia. His name is Brian Kemp, and here is his take on this entire investigation from Big Fani.
She said months ago that one grand jury had reached a conclusion, and she was going to announce her findings, as you just said, in August. I think at the time she said late summer. So that was either July or August, which raises the question as to whether or not a DA is working on specific timing on a schedule to drop what could be a whopper. Do you think that's at play here?
I mean, I guess it could be, but I won't really be able to tell that until I see, what charges there are, who they're charging. I think especially in the Georgia case, there could be multiple people that could end up being charged. And I just don't have a very good feel for that. I mean, I'm obviously not part of the investigation. I did testify in front of the grand jury, which was an interesting process, but we got to let that play out.
Okay.
But regardless, Bill, all of this is what the Democrats want. This is a distraction from us being focused on Joe Biden's record and talking about the disaster at the border, disastrous pullout of Afghanistan, how, he talks about building the economy from the middle out and the bottom up. And the only thing coming out of the middle right now is cash out of their pockets because of Joe Biden's 40-year high inflation, high grocery prices, high energy prices. $400,000 house costs $1,000 more a month now because of interest rates than just a year or two ago. And all of those things, they want to distract from, so-called Bidenomics.
Certainly, there is a lot of attention being focused upon Trump, and certainly those other issues are important and critical, and Americans are concerned about those. But this is much bigger than Donald Trump being a defendant in a public interest case. This is not like the Johnny Depp trial or something. This is a bigger problem because it is the weaponization of the DOJ against the political opponent. So we got to make sure we don't lose sight of that. And the people in the Republican Party who are missing that, who are concerned about all the distractions, I think are forgetting the part that the DOJ, the FBI, the Secret Service, the CIA, all of these levers of power will be brought down to bear against them if they're not checked in the future. So, Big Fani Willis, we'll continue to see when those charges drop as we continue to cover. All right, my friends, now let's see what's happening from the Republicans. Republicans in Congress start to step it up. They've sent many letters over to the Department of Justice, and many of those letters have gone unanswered. But we know that things start slowly and then they go a little bit more quickly, and then we get to Subpoenaville, which is where we might be now. Remember that Congress has already demanded answers about these 11 Department of Justice officials. We've read through this letter that included demands for testimony and interviews with people very important to the Hunter Biden investigation and to the crime family cover-up. People like Leslie Wolf, whose name came up when Gary Shapley was testifying. She was at the Department of Justice. Many people suspect that she was the person who was tipping off the Hunter Biden individuals about the search of the storage facility, and that she was the choke point that was declining and stopping the investigation from maturing. So she got a request for a transcribed interview. So did this guy, David Weiss, number 6. The actual U.S. attorney in Delaware, the people they keep saying is a Trump-appointed attorney that has all the authority to do whatever he wants, except 2 whistleblowers, including a gay Democrat, have said that that is not factually accurate, that the DOJ stopped the actual investigation from progressing. David Weiss, we want to hear from him. Matthew Graves, the U.S. attorney out of Washington, D.C., the same guy who's responsible for a lot of the J6 horrors, involved in declining a request for prosecution brought by David Weiss in Washington, D.C., said no. So wherever Weiss went, Biden-appointed U.S. attorneys declined him. So now Congress said, all right, look, we asked nicely. We said we wanted to talk to those 11 people. You're not responding to us, Mayor. And we've got some problems with that. So this letter goes over to the Honorable Merrick Garland, sent July 21st, 2023 by our familiar friends Jim Jordan, Jason Smith, and James Comer, various congressional committees. They say, all right, Mayor. Now, in the wake of the testimony from the brave, indeed, IRS whistleblowers about the special treatment for Hunter during the course of a criminal investigation, our committees are conducting oversight of the executive branch and the executive branch's commitment to impartial justice. We're also investigating the truth of the statements that were made to us in Congress. And Mayor, as part of this oversight that we have in Congress, we sent you a letter back in June, and we requested that you make 11 DOJ officials, the same 11 we just showed, available for transcribed interviews before the Judiciary Committee. The departments from you, Mayor, you sent us a letter back on July 13th, and you raised several bases for why the department could not comply right now. And we write to address those objections, Mayor, and reiterate our request for your voluntary cooperation, because if it's not voluntary, could be trouble. They say that the department's response letter from the DOJ, you questioned our legislative purpose in conducting our oversight. They said that they had no legitimate basis for investigating Hunter Biden. But they respond, they say, hold on a minute now. There is no serious dispute that committees in Congress have legislative purpose to examine how your department handles these matters. The Supreme Court has recognized that Congress does have broad and indispensable power to conduct oversight, and that a legislative purpose is valid if it concerns a subject on which legislation could be have. Very broad. And so in this matter, Congress may consider a number of legislative proposals, including reforming, for example, the special attorney laws or special counsel laws or the tax laws. We could reform all sorts of laws, including DOJ interactions with the IRS. We could expand the ability of IRS whistleblower laws, and we could share tax info with Congress if we wanted. Supreme Court has said we could do all of these things. And we can focus on information that leads to executive branch corruption, Mayor, and maladministration and inefficiency. And whistleblowers have brought forward numerous concerns backed by contemporaneous documentary evidence of corruption and preferential treatment of Hunty-Poo. Maladministration coming against in the form of retaliation against whistleblowers. And inefficiency in an investigation so bogged down by delays and micromanagement that the statute of limitations lapsed, which was completely intentional, before prosecutors could file certain charges. These are among the matters in which the committee requires testimony to do our job. And Mayor, your letter also asserted that you may not engage with Congress about pending investigations. You cited some non-binding 23-year-old letter. The idea that you can dictate the timing and the scope of our oversight is ridiculous. Even assuming the department is correct, other courts have acknowledged that the District of Delaware is going to consider Hunter Biden's plea agreement on July 26. And at that time, our understanding is that the department's prosecution will have concluded that the matter will be closed, and there will no longer be any reason for the department to not comply in full with our requests. So in other words, give us the documents after the fact. The department's response to us endorsed the statements that were previously made by David Weiss about his authority. But Weiss's representation about his authority has shifted over time. Initially, in the response to a letter that was addressed to you, Merrick, Weiss said, I have been granted ultimate authority over this matter, including responsibility for where, when, and how to file these charges. But in another letter, Weiss claimed that his charging authority is geographically limited to his home district. So what happened? Ultimate authority is one solution versus geographically limited. David, what's the problem? If a fellow U.S. attorney, like in California or D.C., declined to partner, then Weiss wouldn't have the authority to do it. But he explained that then he could get special attorney status. And he was, quote, assured that it would be granted. They say, look, in other words, Merrick, in your first letter, Weiss represented to our committee that he had been granted ultimate authority. But in his second letter, he was assured that he would be granted authority. So did he have the authority or not? And David Weiss provided no explanation of who would make the determination of that necessity. And if he would be granted, that means he doesn't have full authority because he has to go to somebody to get that authority. These are inconsistent, and it's not possible for both of them to be true. So who is lying? Is it Merrick or is it David? Weiss's shifting arguments about his authority to bring charges against Hunter, especially his claims that he had authority to bring charges outside of Delaware, suggest that improper political considerations factored into your investigative and prosecutorial function. Some of Weiss's statements to the committee contradict his own statement to line-level investigators. People like Gary Shapley says that he told them he was not the deciding official. And we know further that on a recent teleconference with Judiciary Committee staff, the Justice Department confirmed that Weiss would in fact appear before Congress. And while we look forward to Weiss appearing at a hearing, we got to still investigate this. And as we explained, we want to interview those witnesses, all 11 of them. The department has made available non-Senate confirmed and line-level employees in the past. We expect no deviation from this precedent there, Merrick. And we write to reiterate our request. So those 11 people, we want to hear from them. And we look forward to hearing from you. And look at this. This is why we read these entire letters. For this line. Absent cooperation with this request, Merrick, the Judiciary Committee will issue subpoenas to obtain the required testimony, period. Oh, yeah, that's good. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Sincerely, your friends, Jim Jordan, Jason Smith, and James Comer over in Congress. Now that's what we like to see, huh? Right there, baby. Get those subpoenas warmed up. Get those pens rolled out. All right. Now, the next step is probably another threat, and then maybe a subpoena, and then probably a subpoena. So we still got a little ways to go. However, it's still a nice word on a government letter to the DOJ. We can enjoy it. So Senator Ted Cruz says, all right, look, the DOJ has been totally involved in a cover-up here. It's obvious. We want to interview these people. The House wants to interview these people. We all want to get to the bottom of it. Here's Lion Ted.
Listen, the only possible conclusion is that the Department of Justice and the FBI were engaged in a rampant cover-up of Hunter Biden's illegality and bribery scheme, but most importantly, a cover-up of Joe Biden's involvement. You know, we had just yesterday 2 IRS whistleblowers testify before the House Oversight Committee, both senior career IRS employees, both Democrats. They don't have a partisan axe to grind. Their testimony was riveting. Their testimony was damning. As you know, Larry, I do a podcast every week, 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, called Verdict with Ted Cruz. Well, it so happens late last night, at about midnight last night, I brought in and interviewed James Comer, the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, and we did 2 back-to-back episodes over an hour long. So part 1 is airing today. The podcast is out today. Part 2 is coming out tomorrow, and we spend over an hour walking through systematically what is the evidence of corruption, what is the evidence of corruption from the 170 suspicious activity reports that the banks filed, from the millions of dollars that were coming to shell companies that were going to the Biden family. What did the IRS whistleblowers testify to? And so today's podcast walks through for the first 30 minutes. Comer going chapter and verse. Tomorrow finishes it. It really was designed because, you know, if you're reading the newspaper or watching TV, you get just a minute or 2 about it. And if you really want to understand, you've got to do a deep dive to examine the facts and evidence. And among other things, the testimony yesterday that Merrick Garland, Joe Biden's attorney general, engaged in multiple felonies, including lying to Congress under oath and obstruction of justice.
Yeah. Those Fox producers are going to get irritated about him coming on Fox and shilling his show. But his point is true. It does take a deep dive. You do get more value when you subscribe to longer form content on the internet and you keep coming back and share the shows with your friends. It's much better when you do that than joining in on these other networks. So that's Ted Cruz. He's got a podcast. Make sure you subscribe to his and to ours as well. Certainly, we'll continue to cover the 11 DOJ officials. We want to know what they know. We want to hear from them. Leslie Wolf, David Weiss, Matthew Graves, and others. And of course, we'll cover as this unfolds. Hopefully you subscribe as we continue to drive along and you join us as we do. All right. Oh, I'm just laughing at Ted Cruz and his podcast, man. All right, so we're gonna look at his podcast again. He's got a great podcast. It's good. I encourage you to subscribe. All right. So, moving right along. The FBI knew about the Hunter Biden laptop, and they didn't tell us. They also didn't tell Twitter or Facebook or any of the other big tech companies. Even when they asked them point blank, Twitter says, hey, you came and you warned us about this hack and leak operation, that the Russians were going to leak something that was totally not accurate. And then the laptop dropped. Twitter had this very precarious position they were in. They said, do we censor the New York Post and do we nuke all of this free speech that's happening right now? Do we crap on everybody's First Amendment privileges in order to suppress their civil liberties, to engage in the political process? Should we do that? Yes or no? And we'll see what the FBI said about it, as well as what Byron Donalds thinks should have been done. But the report came from the House Judiciary GOP. And in a letter after an interview that they conducted, they tell us, testimony reveals the FBI knew the Hunter Biden laptop was authentic. But when they were asked about it by a social media company, about the authenticity, they said, no further comment, which to me is a lie by omission. They knew they were persuading these people so that when the story broke, they wouldn't do anything with it. And now Congress has sent them a letter demanding answers from the FBI Director, Christopher Wray, about this policy. Here's what Congress said. You see, this one came from Jim Jordan, chairman of the Judiciary Committee, and this got sent over to the Honorable Christopher Wray over at the FBI. He got a letter from Jordan. It says, okay, dear Director Wray, Chris, on July 17th, the committee conducted a transcribed interview with an FBI agent. Goes by the name of Laura Demlow. She happens to be the section chief of the FBI Foreign Influence Task Force. And they say that during her transcribed interview, Demlow revealed the same FBI personnel who were warning social media companies about a potential Russian hack and leak operation in the run-up to 2020, the same agents who were doing that preparation, they knew that the laptop belonging to Hunter was not Russian disinformation. The people who were persuading, who were encouraging the big tech companies to dump the story and created this fake narrative that there's going to be a hack of a fake laptop that's a sensitive laptop and it's going to spread all over the internet, but it's not true, it's Russian. They created that story knowing that Hunter Biden's laptop was real. She revealed all of it. Now, after the New York Post story broke a story based on the contents of the laptop about the Biden's influence peddling, the FBI made the institutional decision to refuse to answer direct questions from social media companies about the laptop's authenticity. And this was despite months of constant information sharing up to that time. Okay? They're funneling information back and forth. And so put simply, they say, after the FBI conditioned social media companies to believe that the laptop was a product of a hack and dump operation, the Bureau stopped its information sharing and then allowed social media companies to conclude on their own that the New York Post story was Russian disinformation. So we already knew that this was largely an intelligence operation against us. How do we know that? Well, it's because 51 so-called intelligence experts, ex-CIA people, all colluded together with the Biden campaign, literally through Anthony Blinken and ex-CIA people, and that was their addition to the giant scam. But the FBI, in addition to the CIA, was also doing the same thing. They knew this laptop was real. They knew it had probably been, floating out there somewhere, and they started pre-butting the social media companies to dump this story before it even came out. Then when it came out, they allowed them to believe their pre-sold story. Massive intelligence operation, a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's not like a bad thing happened and they only responded to it. They knew it was coming and they set it up. According to the information available to the committee, the FBI confirmed the authenticity of a Hunter laptop, November 2019. The election was 1 year later, and they gained possession of the laptop in December 2019. And that's now been confirmed by multiple various sources. In 9 months leading up to 2020, the FBI met over 30 times with social media platforms, all while in possession of the laptop. Prior to the election, FBI Special Agent Elvis Chan, the guy who was fielding delete this, delete that requests from all over the world, on behalf of the FBI, he had at least 5 meetings with Facebook, Google, Microsoft, and Yahoo. He had multiple meetings with Twitter and Reddit. Between May and November of 2020, CISA, the Cyber and Infrastructure Security Agency, they hosted at least 9 industry meetings, including 4 meetings in October 2020 alone. All of them censoring all of us. We're all having conversations about the election coming up and about Trump and about the pandemic and about lots of stuff, about Biden, criminality. They're all working together to censor the misinformation and disinformation covertly. Representatives from the FBI, including Agent Chan, routinely participated in these industry meetings. In one meeting, just 1 week before the New York Post article on Hunter Biden laptop was published, the agenda explicitly listed hack and leak concerns as an item of discussion. Now, this begs the question, okay, how did the intelligence agencies know that it was going to leak? Probably because it was just getting closer to the election, now that I think about it. Did they tap, for example, Rudy Giuliani and the laptop repair store? Were they surreptitiously spying on the Trump campaign to say, oh, they're going to drop this thing next week. We better tell all the social media companies, here's a memo. Send it out to all the social companies and get this on the meeting agenda for the next one. Here's an email. It says, hey, gents, we want to share the draft proposed agenda for our USG industry, our government industry meeting scheduled for 90 minutes on Wednesday, a 90-minute meeting. And additionally, to facilitate the logistics for the call, we have included the dial-in information below. 10 minutes for a dial-in and an opening, because they can't be on time. So threats, here's a threat update from the FBI, Twitter, and Google. And here's 40 minutes on a deep dive on, guess what? Hack and leak concerns. Hack and leak concerns. In October, laptop drops, they go, oh, there it is. That's the Russian misinfo. We've been planning for this all along. Just delete everything. The committee recently conducted a transcribed interview of Laura Demlow. She is the section chief of that organization at the FBI, the Financial Crime Center. She testified that by October 14th, the day that the Post published the story about the contents of Hunter's laptop, the individual then serving as the FBI section chief was named Bradley, as well as other individuals. They knew that the laptop was real. Demlow also testified that the FBI could and did share information with companies about foreign malign influence operations like hack and leak operations, including those conducted by Russian-aligned actors. And so the Post, they published their story early in the morning in October. October 14th, it's October surprise season. The election's right around the corner. That same day, representatives from the FIDF at the FBI, they attended a previously scheduled meeting with Twitter. And a Twitter employee at this meeting asked this organization, FIDF, about the authenticity of the laptop. Yeah, I have a question back here. You know that laptop story that came out? Is that real or not? According to Demlow, the woman who's testifying, an analyst in the FBI's Criminal Investigative Division who is embedded in the group, began to respond that the laptop was real. But an FBI lawyer interrupted him to say, hey, no. We have no further comment on that, about that. No further comment. At a Twitter meeting, Twitter employee, hey, is that laptop real? I'm seeing a lot of tweets about it. Is that real? Yeah, hey, this is James over. I'm from Investigative. Yeah, it is real. That's something we got. Lawyer says, hey, pipe down. On that, the FBI's position on that is we have no further comment because we can't comment on ongoing investigations and stuff like that. So our position is no further comment. Here is the exchange from the transcribed interview. The question to Laura says, are you familiar with October 2020 New York Post story on Hunter Biden's laptop? She says, yeah, I am. Do you recall whether any of these social media companies you were meeting with, do you recall whether they asked you any questions about it? The laptop? I do. And what is your recollection? Who? Laura says, so I remember having a conversation with or being involved in a conversation with Twitter, and I can't recall if this was repeated to me. I might have been a few minutes late to the meeting, or if I was, I actually overheard it, but it was relayed to me later that somebody from Twitter, I don't recall who, I'm not sure who, somebody from Twitter essentially asked whether the laptop was real. And one of the FBI folks on the call did confirm that yes, it was, before another participant jumped in and said no further comment on that. Do you recall who from the FBI said it was real? Yes, I do. And who was that? It's a non-senior executive service employee. But I'd have to take that back, to get the name. A non-senior executive. Now, following the meeting with Twitter, FBI personnel immediately deliberated internally about what information about the laptop the FBI would reveal to social media companies in the upcoming meetings. They go, oh crap, this thing dropped. According to Demlo, who's on the team, during the internal deliberations, the decision was made that the FIDF, FBI, their official position was the following: no comment going forward. However, on the instruction of FBI lawyers during the transcribed interview, Demlo refused to answer which FBI official made the decision to say no comment going forward, except to say that it was not her decision and it wasn't her final call. So they don't know whose decision that was, but they want to get who at the FBI instructed the no comment thing. They're telling them about everything else. They're saying, oh, that's Russian disinfo, delete that. Like literally, delete these things. The FBI was literally sending emails. Delete this, Elvis Chan, delete that. This is dangerous misinfo. This is pandemic misinfo, blah, blah, blah. But then they're going to suddenly shut their mouths about this one. Oh, we've got no further comment on that. And they just presume, because they've already persuaded and pre-butted the social media companies to lap up this leak and hack thing, and they already want to censor it anyways because they're a bunch of libs who hate Trump, so they just jumped on it. Later in October, FIDF met with Facebook. During the Facebook meeting, Demlo responded to a similar question from Facebook. They said, hey, is this thing real? She says, well, we've got no comment on that one. The FBI made the decision despite being in possession of the laptop and having confirmed its authenticity. Demlo said multiple people at the FBI knew it was real. Of course, we knew it was real. We could corroborate the emails, the texts with the news articles. Tony Bobulinski was out, but everybody covered it up. Question to Laura. Do you know who else at FIDF knew the laptop was real? I don't actually. I would assume yes, I would certainly say that Brad was aware. What about the individuals on the Russia unit? She says, well, I would assume the unit chief was also aware. I'm pretty certain of that. And for the individual, the lawyer says, just to clarify, do you know to a certainty that they were aware? Or are you just making deductions? So the lawyer's like now challenging her. Are you sure? Yeah, I'm pretty certain they were aware. I'm pretty sure they were aware. Of course they were. Now, in the hours following the publication of the Post story, Twitter blocked the story from being shared. Facebook de-amplified it and significantly reduced its circulation. And as the federal courts in Miami explained in damning language, the FBI and their actions prevented millions of Americans from having a clear understanding about the issue. The court said the FBI's failure to alert social media companies that the laptop was real and not mere Russian disinformation is troubling. The FBI had the laptop in their possession, and they had warned social media companies to look out. Hack and dump is coming. Operation coming any minute. Even after Facebook specifically asked whether it was Russian disinfo, Demlo of the FBI refused to comment, resulting in a social media company's suppression of the story. And it's a political suppression. It's a suppression of the press. It's a suppression of First Amendment rights of Americans who just want to talk about it and share it. And it's my private company stuff, right? And they keep saying that as though might makes right, and as though they can, that's in alignment with the American values of free speech. As a result, millions of U.S. citizens did not hear the story, which was exactly what they wanted. Mission accomplished. And so they're going to try to do this again. I have no doubt about it. But we're going to be more resilient this election. We've got alternative solutions and different technologies and a much broader, more awakened community now. We are aware and apprised of these activities. But this is Byron Donalds. He's explaining that this is something that they should have investigated a long time ago. Here's the representative.
For our audience here, it costs $5 million to pay one, $5 million to pay another. They hired Hunter Biden to protect us through his dad from all kinds or problems. I think that should read of problems. Slochevsky replied something to the effect of, don't worry, Hunter will take care of all those issues through his dad. Look, the FBI's got a real problem with this going public. Do you?
No, I don't, because the FBI should have been looking into this long ago. And what we have now seen, if you go through the Durham report, what Mr. Ziegler and Mr. Shapley testified to in the Oversight Committee yesterday and in front of Ways and Means a few weeks ago, the fact that the Oversight Committee investigation into the money flow from China, from Ukraine, from Romania, and there are other countries that are coming forward, our House investigation eerily matches what the IRS International Tax Fraud Department was investigating. And all of this is matching up. And the last thing that is also matching up is that you have political holdovers and political appointees at the Department of Justice who were obstructing justice so that this matter was never brought to the light of day. Last thing, you also have our current Secretary of State who led this letter of 51 people in our intelligence community who said that the Hunter Biden laptop story was Russian disinformation, and we now know that is a lie. So I think that the FBI has nothing to stand on as far as I'm concerned. This form should have been released to the public long ago.
I want to just read the FBI statement so that we have that on record here. They said that we have repeatedly explained to Congress in correspondence and in briefings how critical it is to keep this source information confidential. Today's release of the 1023 at a minimum unnecessarily risks the safety of a confidential source. I wonder if you have any
FBI's
indication of how
crying.
long this was, did they think that this could go on? Because the investigation has been going on for so many
Joe Biden
years.
wins again?
At what point does this confidential source still risk safety?
Well, look, we believe that the confidential human source, who the FBI themselves has said is highly credible, who the FBI themselves has said that they've been using for multiple years, that source might be doing other things, not just with the Bidens. So I'll leave it at that. I think that's why FBI has that view.
Okay, just back in June, about a month and a half ago, roll this. The president was asked about it.
Bribery allegation. Congresswoman Nancy Mace says there's damning evidence in the FBI file that you sold out the country. Do you have a response to the congressional Republicans?
Where's the money? I'm joking.
Mr. President,
Good question, brother. We have questions about that.
I know how you feel about that. I've heard you talk about it
accounts.
before. You're pushing for an impeachment of the DOJ. Would that just be a formality, knowing that it would not move anywhere in the Senate?
No, I don't think it's a formality, because what this does is it opens up the actual truth of what's happened in this situation. We know, and I'm going to go back to the Durham report. This is why this was so important from John Durham and his team. We know that there are elements of DOJ that have protected Hunter Biden, Jim Biden, and the president of the United States, Joe Biden. They were protecting him when he left the vice presidency. They were protecting him his last year as vice president. They were protecting Hillary Clinton, by the way, when she was in the middle of her shenanigans. And this is the very essence of a two-tier justice system that we have going on in America right now. And so I will tell you that if House Republicans, with all the evidence and all the facts, don't move on this, what you're essentially saying to these bad actors in our government, and frankly to the American people, that if you're in the right political party and you got the right last name, you can do whatever you want, and nobody's going to hold you accountable.
Yeah.
Congressman, what does that look like?
I mean,
I think people can remember the impeachment of President Trump that they did in his presidency, but for an impeachment of DOJ officials, what practically does that look like?
Well, the actual practical pathway for DOJ, I'm going to leave that to Chairman Jordan and the Judiciary Committee, because largely it would move through there. But essentially what I'm looking for, and I think we're going to really go to get, is the Deputy Attorney General, Lisa Monaco. What did she know? When did she know it? Was she signaling to people not to move forward with investigations? Who tipped off the Secret Service detail around Hunter Biden when the IRS wanted to question him? That's grounds for another. Did Merrick Garland stop David Weiss from being able to bring charges in the DC circuit and in the California circuit with those AUSAs? Because that looks very clear to be what's going on. And if they obstructed justice, if they stopped the investigation or stopped charges coming forward, that's high crimes and misdemeanors. It gets no simpler than that. Now I'm gonna move on to Joe Biden, because that's the one a lot of people are talking about. What did the White House counsel's office know about the treatment of Hunter Biden? When did they know it? And at that point, if the White House counsel knows, you know the president of the United States knows.
Wow. All good questions.
All right, so Byron Donalds, man, so he's fired up. And I think that he's right. Obviously, they should have investigated this. And there are benefits to going through the impeachment process. We do get to draw a lot of attention to it, shine a lot of spotlight down upon it, get a lot of eyeballs on it, and hopefully get some truth extracted out of it and force some coverage and force it to be on their record. Stick the impeachment on their record. So Byron Donalds, the House Judiciary, going after Christopher Wray, saying it's time for answers about why the FBI covered up the Hunter Biden laptop at the most critical time during the 2020 election. We'll see what the FBI says, what Byron Donalds does in response. And finally, my friends, we've got one final segment. The House is now closing in on Joe Biden's foreign bank records, and this is something we've been looking forward to for some time. We know that various people involved in the crime family and their schemes, including executives from Burisma, have said in various reports, including the FD 1023, that the structure of the criminality was so layered with LLCs, different corporations, different bank accounts, different countries, that it would take accountants 10 years to piece the whole thing together. But James Comer on Oversight Committee says that they are starting to make some progress. And Ted Cruz and others like Andy Biggs are saying, where will this lead? Maybe to impeachment. Of course, we'll listen to Joe Brezinski complain about it. But first, here's Comer talking about this and what they are uncovering as a result of their investigation.
Well, we've accumulated a ton of evidence. That's something the Democrats aren't used to. They're used to just people like Adam Schiff and Jamie Raskins pulling stuff out of their rear ends saying it's fact. But we're trying to do it the right way, Sean. We're providing evidence, and you can't lie on bank records. And luckily, the IRS whistleblowers today verified what I've been saying for months. We found out on the House Oversight Committee in 5 months what the DOJ has supposedly been investigating for over 5 years. We found that the Bidens have taken millions and millions of dollars from our adversaries, and we don't know why they received the money. No one can explain one simple thing the Bidens did to receive those payments. Now, that's just to the president's son from 3 countries. There are many more countries where we're just now getting the bank records in, Sean. We just now got bank records in pertaining to Ukraine that we're pouring over. We're fixing to announce more wires from more countries.
All right.
And you also have the president's brother. I mean, this is millions and millions of dollars that they never paid taxes on, and they can't account for a single penny of what they did to receive the money. All roads lead to Joe Biden, and still the president won't even admit that his family received this money.
Because everybody just covers up for him and they get away with it. The media is not even covering the story at all. But fortunately, they're still digging in, and it's a lot of money.
That's another violation. Both the president's son and his brother have definitely committed the Foreign Agents Registration Act violation. That's a felony.
Congressman?
Well, that's a great question. And the IRS whistleblowers thought they should be charged too. This investigation by the IRS has been obstructed from the start, and they confirmed what I've been complaining on your show for months, Sean, that the Biden lawyers, the DOJ, the FBI, they're doing everything they can to intimidate witnesses, to obstruct our investigation. Just this week when we had the transcribed interview with the retired FBI agent who confirmed what the whistleblower said, right before he came in to do the transcribed interview, he got a letter from the FBI telling him not to cooperate with the Oversight Committee. I mean, there is example after example of the government stepping in, covering up all of the corruption that the Biden family's committed.
All right. I want to know, how much money do you believe the Biden family did in these foreign business deals? How much money are we talking about? And how much money do we think went to Joe? Because Hunter complains bitterly he gave half his income to Pops and had to pay for Pops' home repairs. And the big guy, and I'm sitting here next to my father in the WhatsApp message. Do you believe you'll be able to tie this money to Joe, and how much money in total? My exit question.
Well, I think there's going to be easily 25 to 30 million plus. And a big development happened today that I don't think anyone's picked up yet. I asked the question, the very last question I asked when I had time yielded to me by Representative Burleson in Missouri was, would you be willing to hand over the paperwork with respect to foreign transactions, because it's been almost impossible for my committee to subpoena bank records from foreign countries. The IRS has that, and they're willing to turn that over to the Ways and Means Committee, who will then hand it over to us. That's a big deal, Sean, because we suspect that the Bidens had offshore bank accounts. And that today was a huge development that'll open up a new door for us to move forward in our investigation.
Right on. So that is good news. So they were focused on all of the domestic bank accounts, Owasco LLC, and all of those transactions that we talked through in great detail during the timeline in the video we talked about previously. All of that was domestic, but they must have been using foreign bank accounts with foreign entities to layer this stuff up and cover all of the trails. So now that the IRS that does have access to some of those materials is going to turn it over to the Ways and Means Committee, which will give it over to Comer, good news. So they are digging into this. And so is Ted Cruz over in the Senate. And look, Ted Cruz has a podcast out in case you missed it. And this is a bombshell episode, by the way. So make sure you're subscribed to Verdict with Ted Cruz. And look what they've got set up over here. And I know I like to poke fun at Ted and all of the other Congress people for having their podcasts now. But this looks pretty good. And I always like admiring another setup. Look at this, man. It looks good. It's it's a lot of work to set up a recording studio. And he's got James Comer in there. It's like a whole setup. I think this is really good. I think that the conservatives need to get better on the media game. I think we need more video content, more conversations, bypass the mainstream media. Let's go directly to the source. Give us the details. Stop filtering everything through CBS, all right? So I think it's good. I also think it's hilarious that he's always plugging his podcast now. But here's Ted.
Wow. What an incredible podcast we had yesterday.
No doubt, Ted.
We're in the middle of our two-part series, an interview with James Comer, Congressman from the great state of Kentucky, Chairman of the House Oversight Committee. Yesterday, we did a deep dive into all of the evidence of the Biden crime family, of the corruption by Hunter Biden, by Joe Biden, the incredible evidence, sadly, of a president of the United States that appears is he and his family are receiving millions of dollars from enemies of America. If you're confused and you don't understand what is happening, and it's easy to be confused because most of the corporate media won't cover it, and to the extent they cover it, you get a minute or two or three.
They won't cover it.
I would say two things. Number one, go back and watch yesterday's part one. You want to understand what really occurred, a deep dive at much greater length than you'll get anywhere else. And then today is part two. Today is the culmination. It explains what really is happening. And listen, this two-part series, it's designed for you to watch now, but it's also designed for you to be able to watch next week, 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, a month from now, because this gives you the information. If you want to know what are the facts, what's the evidence, don't give me partisan bloviating, don't give me talking points, give me real evidence. Today we break down the evidence. I got to say, James, he understands the suspicious activity reports. 170 suspicious activity reports. He explains what those means. He explained what's going on. This podcast, Verdict with Ted Cruz, part one and part two, you're going to learn a lot.
Make sure you download it wherever you get your podcasts. Share it with your family and friends, and you're going to be shocked by, in part two, some of the things that you and I, Senator, didn't even know. So you don't want to miss it. Download Verdict with Ted Cruz right now, wherever.
All right, don't forget to subscribe to Ted Cruz's podcast out there, okay? Anyways, the point is, I think this is very good. Like, I really do, in all seriousness, I like the fact that we've got Ted and Comer sitting there. Grassley would be a nice addition to this. We want to start seeing some more ideas being shared, using new media, using digital media to share these messages, because we know the Washington Post, New York Times, MSNBC, they all just refuse to cover it. So if we're going to be successful, we've got to rebuild the informational supply chains that are necessary to win elections. And we got to build our own platforms, our own YouTube channels, our own newsletters available at robertgovea.com. So you can sign up so that we never lose anything. When you're subscribing to Ted Cruz's podcast, also sign up for our newsletter, robertgovea.com. All right, so you see here, we've got more reaction. Joe Brezinski, who's married to Mika, they were complaining about the Republicans on MSNBC. They were saying that they are the ones who are in bed with the Chinese, not Hunter.
And for that, it was, again, to lie about a document. At the time, they were talking about, I guess, impeaching Wray or whatever. Wray talked to him. And again, it's one thing after another. Durham supposedly is going to show this conspiracy between the FBI and Hillary Clinton. He makes a fool of himself. You have Comer time and time again, like talking about informants who end up being like Chinese agents or foreign.
Like Hunter.
I don't know exactly what they are. But they're doing the business of the Chinese Communist Party illegally. They're funneling Iranian oil, smuggling it illegally to the communist Chinese. They're illegal arms dealers. You go down the list. And then you've got these other people who are supposedly these IRS informants who basically get up there and go, yeah, it was actually Donald Trump.
What is he talking about? Who are basically IRS informants? We read through the bios of Gary Shapley. And by the way, Mr. X, Joseph Ziegler, is also or was a Democrat. Don't know how that's going to last anymore.
When I was complaining, it was Donald Trump who was president then, and it was Trump's IRS and Trump's Justice Department in 2018. And here we have a document that, again, that's complete nonsense. And you have Chuck Grassley going, I don't care whether he's guilty or not. We're just trying to create chaos.
All right, so I think that was the extent of the coverage on MSNBC. Surprised they talked about it for that long, but it's not very coherent. You can see they're all grasping at straws here. I think they were blaming the Republicans for being in bed with the Chinese, which is literally what the Republicans are saying the Bidens were doing. So it's a very interesting conversation over there. Hopefully, hopefully they figure it out. But a big question we talked about on our locals was, are the Republicans going to do anything meaningful about it? Are they actually going to go and impeach somebody like the president? Would it go all the way up to the top? Will they do that between now and the next election? Here's one representative from Arizona, Andy Biggs.
Mentioned impeach. Would you impeach the sitting president over this if it came to that? Well, probably yes, where it sits today, and I'll tell you why. There are at least 7 or 8 additional indicia that Joe Biden was involved in Hunter Biden's business. And this provides the quid pro quo. There are tapes purportedly out there. There's 17 of them, which, by the way, is a number was that they FBI had redacted originally when I saw the document. But the point is, you have a series of different witnesses, whether it's Rob Walker, where it's the AUSA, or whether it's the Ziegler and the other whistleblower, Schlafly, who basically said they believed it was Joe Biden that was involved here. And that leads us to move to an impeachment inquiry. And that's really where the first step is. So you flesh it out a little bit more.
Impeachment inquiry. Will they do it? Who knows? We'll, of course, follow along to see where it leads. And my friends, we appreciate you subscribing and sharing this video with a friend, inviting them to join us here on this channel so we can continue to expand the work that we do here. But that is it for us on the day. We covered some good ground. The House closing in on Joe Biden's foreign bank accounts. Hopefully they get access. The FBI knew all about the Hunter Biden laptop, but refused to answer questions when asked point blank about it by the big tech companies. 11 DOJ officials from Merrick Garland's DOJ might be getting subpoenas unless they start cooperating soon. Big Fani Willis going to be bringing charges any minute now, probably soon in August. And Trump celebrates the May trial date, probably because he knows it's not going to be a May trial date. And so now, my friends, it's time to hear from you and to see what you have to say about it, courtesy of our friends on Rumble, on Locals, on YouTube. We very much appreciate all of your donations and generosity on this lovely Friday. We've got, first in the house, our friend Dolphin Fan is the man, brought in 5 new memberships over on our YouTube membership. Thank you, Dolphin. Very generous. Matt O's coming in. Eric V, Brandon R, SCVM's in the house, along with Drea D, all coming in courtesy of Dolphin Fan is the man. And hey, by the way, that means that tomorrow we're going to have a members-only stream on Saturday. And so if you're a member, whether you join us at watchingthewatchers.locals.com or on YouTube, make sure you join us on Saturday. Jameson is here, says, I just sent another email, added more to the document. All right, Jameson, good stuff. Jameson's working on some nice research, and so I'll take a look at that, Jameson. Thanks for sending that over our way. Says Eugene Deb and Oliver Wendell Holmes, good topic. Eugene Deb, the socialist? The guy who got arrested and ran from jail? That would be a good topic. I kind of have him, I don't have his name in a topic, but yeah, it's a good topic. Good idea. From 2012, Jameson in the house. Let's see what else we got. Rocky Water, good to see you, Rocky. Thank you, Rocky. Super generous. Says, love this stuff, Rob. Again, sorry to keep harping on this, but I love what you do and how you do it. Rock on. Well, thank you, Rocky. I appreciate it, man. I really appreciate it. I'm glad that you're enjoying it. And thanks for being here and supporting the work, man. I really appreciate it. It's awesome. We had another one from Gray Owl AZ. Wow, that's, so you must be an Arizona friend, a neighbor. Gray Owl AZ says, thanks for bringing facts to light in this crazy time. Well, thanks for being here, Gray Owl. Owls they're such an underrated animal. They are so cool. Owls are so cool. They're just underrated. It's like, why aren't there more owls around? Being all wise up there in the branches, watching us. I think that there should be more of them. Hey, this one came in from Horatio. I almost missed it. Horatio is giving me the noob video game controller, which is true. I'm not very good at video games. I mean, sometimes I like to hop on from time to time. One video game that I sunk a lot of hours into, almost like too many, was Factorio. You know that game, also known as Cracktorio, whatever that one is? Yeah. And then you realize, what am I doing right now? What is, I built a microprocessor on this thing. It's a fun game. It's crazy. Be careful with that game. All right, so that one came in. Mark Owens became a supporter. Shout out to Mark. Thanks for joining up, Mark, as a member on YouTube. We are grateful to have you. And Rocky Water, another one, says, in my humble opinion, I agree with the prosecutor that Trump should be treated like a normal citizen. We have laws and policies in place to handle special situations all the time. Trump should be treated exactly like any other citizen who's a former president and current contender. Exactly right. It's called context. You know, you actually have to have context about a person. People are different. Just like you'd want somebody who had other advantages or disabilities, those would also be accounted for. I know it sounds good to say that you can just treat him like everybody else, but he's not like everybody else. So what world are you living in? But that's them. And you know what? Like, you could also say it the other way. You could say, sure, I think Trump should be treated like, how about another president? Trump should be treated equally to, let's say, Biden, or like to Hillary. Hillary was a presidential candidate. She was running. The FBI investigated her. She had all sorts of classified document problems. She deleted them like with a cloth and smashed her phones with a hammer. And the FBI decided there wasn't enough there. So why don't we treat Trump just like we treated Hillary? Because that would be equal application of the law. But we don't do that. Only one gets abused. The other gets excused. Michael Allen Hughes says, is there video of Biden documents in the garage? I don't think I've seen video of that, Michael Allen, but I have seen photographs of it. Although I think there is one video of Biden like backing in his Corvette. Actually, there is that video. It is him backing in the garage in his Corvette. And I think we see the boxes in the back corner under a lampshade or something, if I remember correctly. Hey, FMF Doc is in the house, sharing a nice, I think this is a selfie here. Looks like in an office running for Senate. Says FMF Doc is in the house. Says real patriots for our U.S. Senate. Thomas D. Murphy for Senate out of South Carolina. Godspeed, good sir. Real patriots for our Senate. We definitely need more real patriots in the Senate. And you're in South Carolina, so that's Lindsey Graham territory. Sounds good to me. Shout out to Thomas D. Murphy in the house. We've got Salty Sarge over on Rumble. Good to see you, Salty. And shout out to our friends on Rumble. Says, okay, unfortunately, the government has unlimited resources and unlimited time to grind you down. That's true. Thank God for Trump. With his wealth and his wherewithal, he will not go gently into that good night. I honestly think there's a lot of truth to this statement. Anybody else would buckle under the pressure. And Trump, he has his wealth, but Trump also has this unique fortitude. And, you know, some people might call it like a delusion almost. And I say that like not in a bad way. You know, there are people that have reality distortion fields is what they said about Steve Jobs. You know, guys like this and like Elon, they just distort reality. Elon says, we're going to make an electric car. Nobody's been able to do it. We're going to do it. Steve Jobs does what he does. Trump does what he does. It's almost like this disconnect with reality in a way that says, I'm not accepting the reality. I'm just going to make it my own. I don't really care what the consequences are. It's not going to emotionally grind me down and I will overcome. It's a very strange skill set and a habit. And I think Trump has it. And you need that to survive the crucible, like something like this. So I think it's a very astute point. Jackie Carrion says, thank you, Rob, for explaining things like a 2-year-old. I understand things much better now when it comes to Trump. Love our members only time also. Thanks, Jackie. So do I. It's a lot of fun. Our members only time stuff, we get into strange topics sometimes. We were talking about the nature of reality yesterday, and it left me thinking, you know, a lot about it. Like I love our talks. So come and join us. And good to see you, Jackie. Yeah, I appreciate you being here. Catherine Rex says, I love your work. Wish you were one of his lawyers, LOL. Sometimes I've thought that too. I thought, oh gosh, I need to get involved in this. But thanks, Catherine. We're having a lot of fun here. Love this work. Rocky Water says, I just had perhaps the best nectarine of my life. Cheers to the nectarine season. Is it nectarine season? So I had a couple oranges today, but they weren't the best of my life, actually. They were probably like, I don't know, moderate oranges. I had 2 of them. And I was like, all right, these aren't that great, but they might have been a little bit past their ripeness, you know? So I don't know. Okay, it's nectarine season. Good. I'm about to place an order for fruit. Big, what else is in? Cherries are good right now too. All the summer fruits. Yeah, I'm gonna place a big order this weekend, actually. I'm gonna fruit it up, baby. It's gonna be a fruit bowl over here in this house. All right. So we got Zena Xavier says, my alphabet is LGBTQ, which stands for Let's Get Brandon to Quit, which is a nice acronym. Indeed. You can identify acronyms however you want here. This is America. Fred Pedamonte says, history won't be kind to Garland, to Smith, or to Wolf. I think you're right about that. I think this is going to go down as a weird era in American history, and these people are all going to be responsible for a real catastrophic fissure in the American structure, in the foundation of America. Salty Sarge says, Tishy will need a tissue, and Fannie Mae get it in the keister with their illegal law warfare on Trump. Ask the stripper. Who's that? Stormy. Just saying, walk gently. They don't call them useful idiots for nothing. Well, so like Trump, I think, got a big judgment against Stormy Daniels. She owes him a bunch of money, but Tishy and Fannie, they are bringing criminal charges. Trump's not going to really have a claim against them. Like, he's not going to be able to get monetary damages out of Fannie's Fannie or Tishy's Tish. But they'll get their repercussions, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Peaceful political repercussions. We've got this one from Woods. Woods Precision Arms. Says, Robert, would like to write firearm-related articles for your upcoming newsletter. I sent you a DM on Twitter if you could please read. Yeah, I'll read it, definitely. Well, so our newsletter is a daily newsletter. So our newsletter is just like the show. It's a summary of the show, and it gives you the links to the clips and to all the reports. So like maybe you'd want to write an article for the website that would be included in the newsletter, something like that. So here's what I'm saying is, like, the newsletter, the only thing the newsletter is just basically a summary of the show and then these reports. So if you go on the website has these various reports. And so if you want to just read something, so like we just published this one, Rubio. It's Rubio. He's talking about aliens. And so like this report, gets summarized for us. So you can read about it. But we'll summarize this and then send it in the email. So like I'm happy to talk to you about it. Maybe I shouldn't think about it live on the live stream, but that's what my thought process was. But certainly I will take a look at your email, and I appreciate you doing the work you're doing. And maybe we could do that. Like maybe we could include like guest posts and other articles and other things. I'm thinking about it. So it's a great idea. Salty is here. Says this case will take years to adjudicate. All the ins and outs and constitutional rulings to be argued on and ruled on, making it a part of the Constitution. It is going to take a long time. I don't doubt that at all. I think you're dead right about that. We have this one also coming in from Woman Noun, Female Adult Human, which I think is still in probably a dictionary somewhere. I'm not sure what dictionaries anymore. But Woman Noun says, America, heart, Canada, prayers, thank you. And thank you, Woman Noun, adult, female, human. If there's anybody who's questioning, pronouns and definitions, this is a pretty good one. Woman, noun, female, adult, human. We got Salty Sarge says, Ted Cruz either needs a higher table or a shipment of Field of Greens. Hook him up, Rob. Yeah, and when are they going to start advertising too? It's going to be interesting. It's going to be very interesting. So if they're having podcasts, maybe I should run for office, run for office so I can have a Senate seat and a podcast. If they're having podcasts, it's like an unfair advantage. because you get your Senate seat to promote your podcast. It's not fair, man. He gets more promotion opportunities from Congress. It's BS. All right. Hey, Kenneth Wolf says, hey, welcome, Kenneth. Kenneth became a supporter. So, Kenneth, we'll see you tomorrow on our Saturday stream. Thanks for joining. Trust2 Kid says, thanks for a great week, Rob. I still can't get over how awful the Democrats were to RFK Jr. yesterday. Have a great weekend. Yes, indeed. It was pretty brutal what they were doing, and absolutely amazing to hear him fight back on it. So good to see you, Trust2 Kids, in the house. Have a great weekend, you too, my friend. Dolphin fan is the man. Says, Rob, I wish everyone a freaking fun and blessed weekend, man. From Dolphin fan. Thank you, Dolphin. Rob, you should ask the leaf blower guy if he has a ladder you can use. But here is a $20 donation to buy your own. Thank you, Dolphin. We were talking about the ladder. So on our members stream this morning, I was explaining that I was trying to install a Starlink up at the apex of our cabin, which is very high. It's 2 stories. We pulled out our big, tall ladder. We extended it all the way out there. I was probably, I don't know how many feet up, a lot. And I was just about 6 feet shy of the apex to install it. And my mom came out. She's like, you guys are done. We're not doing this anymore. And it was the right call. It was the right call. Ladder was too short. It was a little bit, flexing in the wind. We could have done it. I think the success likelihood was 60% likelihood of success, 40% failure of death, which is pretty good odds for most dudes out there. And you understand what I'm saying if you know these percentages. Like, that's pretty good for most dudes. When you get, if it's 60% success, those are pretty good odds. And if it goes into like 40% success, so if it flips, it goes to, those aren't bad odds. You see what I'm saying? 60% likelihood of success those are good odds. And if it goes to 40%, those aren't bad, right? So I like my chances either way. But my mom canceled us. Anyways, so thanks, Mom. Love you. Vientikis shared this one from Curtis Bartle, scaring us. This dude is freaked out, as are many of us, about the state of America. What's up, K-Bean? Thank you for K-Bean's clipping too. And V's helping away, and I appreciate K-Bean. And man, we got the best mods. Isaac Bowles is here. Says, I'm just here for the Field of Greens ad reads. Oh, thanks. I gotta figure out some more ways to spice those up. Today's was a little bit lacking in animation, but sometimes they're fired up. We never know. You never know what you're going to get. Kind of depends on the read. Hey, a bad poet says, thumbs up, and the crack of dawn sunrise, a beautiful fresh day. Thank you, a bad poet. Andrew Richardson is here. Says, swear jar money. Love the show. Keep it up. Thank you, Andrew Richardson. Sometimes you got to let the expletives fly. I know what you mean. And woman, noun, female, adult, human says, you need to be on Trump's council. I think he's got appropriate people. So the way I think about it, woman, now, though, first of all, thank you for the very nice compliment. The way I'm thinking about it is Trump and conservatives and Republicans, they also need advocates in the court of public opinion. And we are going to be ramping that up big time to be covering all of these prosecutions from a defense perspective and offering a counter narrative to all of the nonsense going on over the next 18 months or so up into the election. So I think that's going to be where we're going to be, trying to deliver our most impact and be most effective there. Certainly, I'd be willing to help or, lend assistance in any way, shape, or form. But a lot of these people are, lifelong litigators, and they're good litigators. They've been doing it for 30, 40 years. And so, I think he's in good hands with some of these people. But I do appreciate the endorsement. But either way, we're going to be, really trying to amplify our efforts here. We're building out our newsletter. We're trying to really build a robust website so that we provide maximum value to you, so that it's shareable, it's useful for you. and that we can expand, right? Could expand our reach and be more anti-fragile. So if they try to cut our legs out from under us this election season, we've got some redundancy built in. And we're working hard on it right now because the clock's ticking and the election season is it's here. It's right around the corner. Things start in January. So thank you, everybody, for those very generous contributions today. Let's say hello to our friends on Twitter before we go over to locals for our after party. We had a couple comments on Twitter today. Let's see who's in the house. We've got pineapple on pizza is a bad idea, Rob. This is true. This is a pineapple on pizza meme. Here you can see what it looks like. Pineapple on pizza. Here's pineapple. And the pizza's petrified because it should never happen. Horatio Spinelli says, long live fungibility in accounting. And Rob, hopefully a helpful health hint. As my mom said, if you're 27 foot up on a 24-foot ladder, you've gone too far. Mother knows best. That was the truth. I was hanging up there and it didn't feel all that safe, but you never know. Sometimes life's an adventure and you just get it done. Hey, Dr. High's in the house. I guess doesn't like our thumbnail or somebody's thumbnail, but it's good to see you, Dr. High. Welcome to Twitter, our Twitter timeline, either way. We have Feline Fun says, even if the House impeaches Biden, I don't have faith that the Senate and the Democrats will do the right thing. It feels like there's no justice. I think that is true. The Senate wouldn't do anything. Just Because says, it's difficult catching you for UK viewers. I think you run 11 to 1 our time. Family is away this week, so finally get to watch live and not first thing in the morning. Keep up the good work, and thanks for being such a great source of reliable information. What a great comment, and shout out to our UK friends. Man, I never thought about that. Yeah, that is like the worst time ever. That's curious. Very curious. Yeah, so very curious. Okay, so thanks for that. And Feline Fun is in the house. Francis White says, the indictments will continue until all opposition is silenced, from Merrick Garland. Danny McWilliams is in the house. And Fred Pedamonte says, I believe if the riot never happened and the process was allowed to go forward, there would have been more affidavits of fraud and Trump would be the president today. Yeah, maybe they would have contested it, sent it back down to the states, and something else could have happened. Who knows? But we will carry on. Jameson says, my research is on going on offense. Research is on going on offense, which is a good thing to do. Not always play defense, but sometimes the best defense is a good offense. And so thank you, Jameson, for that one. Now, before we wrap up, my friends, one final reminder, head on over to robertgovea.com. Would really love to see you sign up for our brand new newsletter, daily show notes, reports now on the website, and you can access literally this entire mind map. So if you want PDFs, links, all of the archives are loaded right here in this mind map. There's a full tutorial on how to use this mind map on your computer, and you can check it out. If you sign up for the newsletter, you'll get that link to that video, watch the tutorial, and play around. Also, don't forget to join up at watchingthewatchers.locals.com or as a member on YouTube to join us for our Saturday stream, baby, which is going to be fun. Don't know what we're talking about, but there's always good stuff. It's like Saturday morning cartoons, Come and join us. Watchingthewatchers.locals.com or on YouTube. We do daily streams during the week. We have a private members-only Telegram group, and we'd love to meet you. So come and say hello. Also, get your Field of Greens at fieldofgreens.com. Healthy, organic superfood. It's going to help you be healthy and well. And you can save 15% off with code Robert when you check out. Big shout outs to our mods and meme smiths who help keep this show nice and orderly. Big thank yous for an amazing week. Thank you to Vienticus Prime, K Bean, our friend Just Cause, Playin' Hooky, Ronnie Cole, Zulu's in the house, Beyond Geostars, Zach Nichols, John Allen, our friend Janek909, Dog Digger, Donut Mind Me, Sleepy Dog Lee, our friend Geegum Geegum, Nathan N810, and of course, John McGarvey, always helping out. We appreciate everybody being a part of our tremendous community. But that is it for us on the day. Locals and our members on YouTube, join us on Telegram for our after party. But we are going to leave it right there. And my friends, we will be back here after this. True Neutral says, I know, it's about time. Really enjoy the show and the community. Thank you. Well, thank you for being here, True Neutral. And this is your first super chat here on our channel. Welcome aboard, True Neutral. We're grateful that you're here. And thanks for your support. And thanks for jumping in. I know sometimes it's kind of scary to send in a chat or say hello, but I'm grateful that you did. Very cool. I really appreciate your support. And I hope you have a beautiful weekend. And so that, my friends, is it for us on the day. We are going to leave it right there. And we will come back on Monday to do it all again. And so over this weekend, I hope you were able to unplug from politics a little bit, get outside, spend some time with friends and family, get that vitamin D in the sunshine, get that nice fresh air, and recharge those batteries, baby, because we're going to be back here next week to do it all again. And we're going to get and attend to some serious business. And I hope to see you right back here so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful weekend, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here on Monday. Locals, hang tight. See you in a minute. Everybody else, make it a great weekend. Bye-bye.